We're going to start with the first Kinnah, Kinnah Vav, which is Shavas Suru. It's actually not on the page. We're going to start with by Kinnah Yirmiyo, Kinnah Yud Aleph. But I guess before we jump to Kinnah Yud Aleph, just want to talk about the first word of Kinnis. The first word, and then we're going to jump to Kinnah Yud Aleph. The first word of Kinnis is a very famous word. Shavas. Shin, Beis, Tav. Of course, we all know that the word Shavas comes from the word Shabbos. Rabbi Eliezer HaKalir, who wrote a lot of the Kinnis, didn't just start with the word Shabbos by mistake. He's quoting a pasuk from Eicha. Shavas means to stop, cessation. What does it mean to stop? And more importantly, why is the Shavas of our Kinnis different than every Shabbos that we experience throughout our lives? And maybe this is why we're so utterly confused. Shabbos, we know when it's going to come. It's the 7th day of the week. Shemitah, Shabbos, Shabbos La Hashem, is every 7 years. We prepare for Shabbos. We prepare for Shemitah. Destruction, Chorban, we couldn't prepare for. Even though we received all the warnings. Yirmiyahu Hanavi and all the Nevi'im tried so hard to come and tell Klal Yisrael, we have to do tshuva. And yet, you just don't believe it's going to happen. Like last night, what do we read? We read a Megillah called the Eicha. What is the word Eicha? The word Eicha, Merushiva Eber comments, it's called a how. That's how. It's called a how. Why how? It should be lama, it should be why. Because when something hits you and you're not prepared for it, it's how did this happen? Why did it happen? We know why the Chorban came. We got warnings. How did it happen? When we begin Kinnis, we begin with Shavas. We begin that the world all of a sudden was just still, was just silent. It was a type of Shabbos which is just so painful because you're not ready for it. We had all the warnings, and yet in a moment, everything disappeared. Utter destruction. And we can think about events that, yeah, is it going to happen? But then when it happens, did that really happen? When destruction happens, sometimes it comes from a place of Shavas that the world just, we feel is ending on us. Kinnis begin with a feeling of just silence, blackness, devoid. If you ever walked into the forest by yourself late at night, no one around you, the first step in the forest, you're okay. But as you go deeper and deeper, and it's pitch black, and you cannot see anything, that's Shavas. The world just ends. When the Chorban Beis HaMikdash happened, the world just ended. And we're getting all the warnings once again. And we've spoken about the fact that if the Beis HaMikdash is not rebuilt, it's Kilu Hechrivoi. It's as if we destroyed it. So let's just put that picture in our minds. There's a world going on. Life is moving. And yet, in a moment, in a split second, when Hashem determines, Shavas, it all could end for the good or for the not. Anyone that's ever went through a tzara in their life, whether it was a death, whether it was an illness, whether it was a family member, you'll remember that moment seared into your brain. That's Shavas. The whole world ends at that moment. You'll never forget where you were when certain events happened. It goes seared so deep into your brain, into your heart, because in that split second, with the second of Chorban, the moment of destruction, is a moment of Shavas, is a moment of just utter destruction. And that's a moment we never want to get to. I'm sure everyone had moments in their life. Maybe it was a grandparent being nifter. Maybe it was of finding out a family member is ill. Maybe it was finding out that what you thought was good news wasn't. Maybe it was a family member didn't have children for many years and you thought Baruch Hashem, and unfortunately it didn't end well. Maybe it was when we heard that, I remember still the exact place I was standing when the Twin Towers were hit. I remember the locker I was standing next to in my 8th grade yeshiva. The moment I heard, because the moment you hear of destruction, the whole world around you is shavas. The whole world around you turns dark. The whole world around you turns black. The whole world around you is nothingness. And if you want to know why it's so painful, why is it so painful at that moment? Why will you never forget it? Why will I never forget walking off the bus and seeing Shmuley Bornstein Olav Shalom lying on the floor? Why will I never forget the seat I was sitting in the auditorium that sat 1,000 people? And when we went back there 15 years later, I picked out the exact seat I was sitting in when they announced that unfortunately a friend of ours was nifter. Why? Because at that moment, it shavas. The world around you stops, ceases to exist. Why? When I found out that my neighbor who had children the same age of mine in Eretz Yisrael, she was diagnosed with cancer. And in a few short weeks, I was standing at her levaya. I will never forget, because the world just stops at that moment. Destruction. Nothing matters. Nothing. And the reason it's so painful, to go full circle, and then we're actually going to begin with Shabbos with the first Kinnah. The reason it's so painful is because you just don't know what to do. What am I supposed to do? What could I do? Everything else, we're in control. We know what to do. Someone gets sick, we dive in. This thing, we go to a doctor. We go try a little harder. We know what to do. But in the moment that you hear of destruction, in the moment that you hear of illness, in the moment that you're woken up and you find out that a family member, Rahman al-Islam, is critical, you don't know what to do. It's that sfigus. It's that lack of clarity. It's that realization that there is nothing we could do. And that is why we sit. That is why we mourn. So as we read Shavas, whether you know what all the words mean or not, just think of one of those moments in your life when the world around you stopped. It might have been for 1 second, and maybe a moment later, you moved on. But that moment of pitch black, that moment when your heart just clenches and you don't feel you could go further, that moment that you feel that nothing else in the world matters, that's a moment of Shavas. And that's truly what Churban Beis HaMikdash is. It's a moment of utter destruction.